Welcome. MoreGoodDays acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Welcome everyone. I'm Sonia. I'm one of the support coaches here at MoreGoodDays, and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in 2012. I did the MoreGoodDays program in 2022, and in 2023, I then joined the team as a support coach. I got a lot of benefit out of the program and really enjoyed it, and obviously ended up in a position where I'm able to help other people. Rachael, who's joining us today, is also one of our support coaches. She's also a mortgage broker and has done that for many years and won several industry awards. We decided that we get a lot of questions about how to manage on a reduced income. We know that being sick is expensive. You've usually got increased medical bills. Even just getting a diagnosis can cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to just get a diagnosis of fibromyalgia when it's such a difficult thing to chase down, really. And then it often comes with a reduced income as well. So we have a lot of our clients who really struggle with paying the bills and making ends meet with all of these different expenses and a reduced income. So we thought we would take advantage of Rachael's very clever brain and help us out with some hints and tips about how to manage on a reduced income and make that dollar stretch that little bit further. We know that it is a difficult thing, but sometimes it can be something that we don't really notice. So I'll hand over to Rachael now. She can introduce herself a little bit more, tell us about her journey if she doesn't mind, and then maybe you could start off with letting us know how we might tell that we are actually struggling with our finances.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to start a slideshow. So I'm a bit like Sonia. I was diagnosed with fibro in 2013 after some significant life events, and as well joined as a client with MoreGoodDays and found it really helpful and valuable, and decided to see if there was any more that I could do, which is when I began doing some of the coaching. Because I've been through that personal journey of trying to manage fibro while also trying to manage a budget, I thought it was something that I might be able to give some help with. So one of the things that I notice and the things that I hear from a lot of my clients when they're going through financial stress is that they're getting reminder notices for payments that they owe. They're not sleeping well. They're worrying about how to make ends meet. They will not go out for lunch or dinner or do things that would bring them joy because they just don't have the finances to eat out. It's different if you're choosing not to go because you're unwell. It's really frustrating if you're having a good day and you have to make the choice not to attend things because you can't afford to. They often, clients will say, as a broker, clients will say that, you know, they'll tap the card and then pray that it's going to actually accept or approve. And one of the things that I hear quite regularly in both sectors, in my work as a financial person and then also as a coach, is that people want to be able to have therapy. And often they need a number of different specializations to help them to heal or to be able to function better, but they're having to cut costs, they're having to make choices, and the outcome of that is that they're not necessarily getting all the therapy they need. And so all of those things don't just affect your financial health, they really affect your emotional health. And as a consequence, when you're stressed about money and you're not sleeping because you're worrying about it, it can often create flare-ups of pain. And it's not unusual. The steps to try and manage your financial health for whatever reason are the same, whether it's because your mortgage is too high or because you need a lot more health support. They're uniform steps. And so I just wanted to go through a few. One of the first things that we don't necessarily do because we've been unwell, and we've also, you know, sort of it usually creeps up on you, is to get a control of your finance. And the quickest way to do that is, to begin with, is to list everything. And it may seem inconsequential. It may be, oh, it's that $5 coffee when I'm walking on my way to work, or you know, it's that Zip Pay or Master Pay, or and so until you know every single one of your liabilities and exactly how much it's draining out of your pocket each month, you're not going to be able to have control. So even though it can be difficult because there's so many scattered thoughts and there's brain fog, especially when you're in the middle of a fibro flare-up, the best way of doing this can sometimes be just to keep a notebook beside you and say, okay, I've seen that come out this month. I totally forgot that I'd signed up for Stan 2 months ago, or, you know, that I signed up for a subscription and I'm not using it as much as I need to. So you won't necessarily see it until you write them all down. You won't get a clear picture of what it is that you're spending money on. When you're making a list of your debts, the minimum monthly repayment is important, and when that payment is due, because it depends on whether your income is weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. And trying to get a handle on all of these at the same kind of, so if you work on a weekly wage, then look at your weekly expenses. It just helps you know what's money's coming in and then what money's going out. One of the best budget planning websites that I've come across is a government one, and it's on a site called Money Smart. And Money Smart, it can be a really valuable tool. The way that it works is that you can go through all of the different areas that they work with, but if you start to put your budget in, it actually holds your URL. So you can log in another month from that same device and you'll be able to see your budget come up, because it's the government website's captured that URL, so you don't have to re-enter all of that data. On the side, there are many different areas. There's, you know, all of the costs of your mortgage, your rent. Then, as you can see, there's groceries and medical. What I really liked about it when I first started using it was that when I was doing a spreadsheet or any kind of budgeting tool, I just write the name of the commitment and then the amount, and that was okay. But what Money Smart does that I think can help some of us who learn differently is it breaks that pie into sections. So then I can get a much clearer picture of what are my financial commitments. And you can see for most people now, 30 to 50% of their financial commitments are their mortgage or their rent. But when you see it as a pie like this, when I was looking at it in the beginning, I would go on at 6:30 at night after I'd finished a client, and I'd duck to Coles, I'd get whatever I felt I needed, and then I'd go home. And I didn't realize until I started looking at my budget that by going there hungry late at night, I was buying things that I may not have needed. I wasn't planning ahead. And so it was when I saw a pie chart like that, where a significant portion was my food and groceries, that I then had to look at, okay, how do I reduce that cost? The other part of Money Smart is that they will help you to reduce your debt. They'll give you tools and resources. They give you the budgeting tips for managing money, and it's all done through a government website, so your personal data is secure. And it's a really good tool and resource to have. the next thing, once you've listed all of your things, be that in a notebook or on a spreadsheet, is to try and either put them into columns or number them to say, is this a must-have, a like-to-have, or a remove? And some examples of that would be, you know, we must all have rent, electricity, internet, that kind of thing. It's nice to have Netflix, a gym membership, you know, all of the things that make life a little bit easier, but there are often things that we can remove. So sort of listing, and everyone's priorities are different. So if you're really unwell with fibro, I would suggest that having a subscription or membership to any of the support tools that help you becomes more like a must-have than a like-to-have. So making sure that you prioritize all of the things and that you put them in and then work out, okay, well, how much is removing those 4 or 6 items going to save me in a month? So it's starting to be a bit mercenary with your budget and look at the little pieces and how they all come together to create, you know, the whole. I think the part that I see a lot of people struggling with at the moment is their mortgage payments. And one of the things, if you do have to talk to a financial provider in relation to changing your mortgage payments or having options, is that they will be very specific, and they will want to know exactly how much you're spending and what you're spending it on. The financial hardship team have sort of averages that they expect that people should be able should require, and if you're spending a way more on something, then they'll ask you, well, is this more important or is your mortgage more important? So when you do feel like you're in a financial hardship place, getting a closer knowledge of your budget before you talk to your lender can often mean that conversation with the lender is a lot less frightening. The thing that I would also ask is if there's what options they have available. So the options that they have are to restart your mortgage to 30 years, or to put you onto interest-only payments, or to with you agree that, you know, you can only make a payment of X, and that is the payment that you'll make, and then whatever else that you owe will accrue as in deficit. When it comes to everyone other than your mortgage provider, it does pay to call them, whether it's ActuAGL or you know, Origin Energy or Optus. It doesn't matter who they are. Any of those credit services that you may be part of where you owe them money, they don't actually want to put a negative mark against your credit score, and they all have a financial hardship area. So if you at all can, and it's scary, I know it's scary, I've been there before myself, but when you, and even with the ATO, you know, giving them a call and saying, look, I'm not coping, I've run my budget, I can see how much money in is and money out is. At the moment, they're not, you know, those two columns aren't meeting. So what options do you have available? It's only a phone call, and having that phone call with them and coming to an arrangement with them will mean that you don't impact your credit score. And your credit score is something that can take up to 5 years to fix. So getting in and being proactive from the beginning and saying, okay, I'm in this situation, you know, through illness, and here's what has happened to my work because I've reduced hours. How can I work with you to pay you what you need? And, you know, that might be extending the term, but it's always worth having that conversation because they're generally quite helpful. When you do contact the hardship team, they will give you options, and that can be that they'll ask you to set up a payment plan, or they'll extend the term of your payments, and they'll alter the loan repayments. At the end of the day, we all have to pay the loan back, but if you're given 5 years versus 2 years, it can make a huge difference to your capacity to repay. A lot of the questions that I get asked is, well, isn't that going to affect my credit score? The answer is that it will be listed that you've entered into a financial hardship arrangement. However, it won't reduce your credit number. Your credit score, when you go and speak to them, there's also options that they will give you, and you can have contacted them first so that you can say, look, I've already tried this. And that's to speak to a financial counsellor or a debt management support service. And if it's really getting to you emotionally, please speak to Beyond Blue or Lifeline or any of the services that can help you.
That's such a good point, Rachel.
It's so scary, and it can be so overwhelming. And if you have a call with either of those services before or after, it can help you to debrief, because a lot of the time we don't want to talk to our family about, being in debt. So, giving any of those mental health or emotional support services a call and saying, look, I'm just about to ring the bank, they can help you be in a headspace where you're able to manage that call. Or if you've been on the phone to the lender and they've been a bit aggressive, or it's brought up a lot of issues for you, please ring them. All these services are there so that we can give them a call, and we're very lucky that we have them. With the National Debt Helpline, it's a really good service, and it's free. So it can also be someone that you ring just to ask the questions of what you don't know, because we don't know what we don't know. So it's worth just sort of talking to as many people as you can, and maybe just picking up, a tiny bit of information out of any of them. I've talked a bit about your credit score, and the reason I've done that is because I see that one of the first things that happens when people are in financial strife is their scores drop. The reasons for that can be that it's late payment, but it can also be that they've tried to fix the problem. So they've gone, I'll see if the bank will give me another $5,000 personal loan or a credit card, and then that gets declined. And then it's like, well, I'll try a cash converters. And so what the banks and what the credit score does is it's an algorithm that gives the lender an idea of how you're performing financially. And if you've got more than one inquiry in a month or 3 in a year, it generally says to them that you're starting to struggle. So keeping your score strong will mean that you have more power if you have to go into negotiations around repaying things. We are able to see you can pay to see your score, but we are also able to see our score through apps like ClearScore. And they will give you a picture of how you are currently going financially. And they've got some good tips and tricks on, how do you increase your score. When you're going near any of those, be careful, because the first way that they make money is to say, congratulations, Sonia, you've got a score of 850 out of 1,000. You qualify for 2 personal loans. So take the information, don't necessarily take any of the debt that they ask you to sign up for. But getting and understanding your score can be really helpful. When I look at finances, stress and the head miles that we do trying to fix a problem of, I'll pay this a bit later, or I won't go for this week. And, all those head miles that I hear my clients doing when they're so concerned about their finances, if we could convert them into kilometres, we'd all be athletes, because we run them over and over and over in our head. And we know that stress flares up our pain. We know that it flares up all of those responses. So it can have a twofold benefit to managing your finances, because once you feel like you've got more control over your finances and you feel like you're managing that better, you'll probably find that the counterbalance to that is that with less stress comes better sleep. And looking at any way that you can, because it's all those little drops that make the whole ocean. Some of the ways are itemizing your outgoings. I have clients that have, massive spreadsheets that work really well for them. Others will go, okay, well, I've got $200 for the fortnight and I'll plan my menus around that. And then that means that I've got more to use elsewhere. Some people have gone back to, and it's quite common now, gone back to having little wallets and pulling their money out in cash, putting it in, here's my 20 for electricity, here's my 50 for petrol, and putting it into little wallets. And because when it's in paper cash, they can see it disappearing, and it makes them think twice. Or if there's nothing left in that little envelope, there's nothing to spend. So to get to know how you manage money better. And also the banking apps, they've come a long way and they're quite sophisticated now in being able to say, well, Rach, you've spent $35 on coffee this month. And, that can be a bit of like, really? It only felt like one coffee every second day. So getting to know your banking app or finding a way that you can have better control over your budget. Other clients will have one account and they'll just put their $50 into that account, which is their spending money. And once that card declines, they don't spend anymore. So there's no right or wrong way. There's only the way that's going to help work for you. One of the things that I see a lot of people do, and I think helps, is to look at Facebook groups, because sometimes it can become something really simple. I was looking at a group yesterday where they were talking about that they'd sliced a tomato into pieces and then put it in some dirt, and that one tomato gave them 135 tomato plants. So there's really clever ways to save money, and there's things that I would not have even thought of. And when you get a huge community like the communities you get on Facebook, you get lots of different ways and lots of different ideas. And just having a look at them might prompt you to think, oh, I could do that too. So getting a bit of an understanding of, the different resources that are out there and different people that, and how they've managed their budget really helps. There's also lots of, because one of the questions is, but it's expensive to eat well. And to some degree, when you can see, a burger for $3, you think, well, that might be right. But if you look at food co-ops, if you look at eating on a healthy budget, there's just countless websites that will help give you ideas of ways that you can eat well. And it doesn't have to cost a lot to do so. So, and I know that when we've got fibro, it can often be a bit overwhelming. It's like, oh, that's big. What I suggest again is maybe just have that notebook with you and go, okay, well, today I'll go and find one recipe for next week that I can do for under $10 for the family. And that's one recipe and one meal that cost you less than the week before. So they're small drops, but they end up making a big pool. So don't give up. And if you feel overwhelmed today, there's always tomorrow. You can never, you're not going to fail. You're just going to keep trying until you get to where you want to be. Examples of things that I hadn't really even thought of were when I was looking at ways to save money is, and we've heard it, but I didn't understand how much of an impact it was. We buy cheese for the kids for lunches or for ourselves for lunches. And when you look at buying a block of cheese, then you can grate it, you can slice it, you can, there's a lot of versatility, and it does save you money. The swap fresh for frozen and buying in season, There's a whole movement around buying in season because, you know, if we're buying apples when it's apple time and strawberries when it's strawberry time, they're often a lot cheaper than they are. But frozen as well, you know, frozen raspberries and and fresh raspberries, there's not really that much difference. Especially if you're using them in smoothies or in different cooking. So it's not necessary to have fresh in those instances, and it can make a really big difference to the cost.
And those ugly fruit and vegetable movements,
Yes,
they're
yes,
really good too. They always taste the same, or almost always, sometimes not, but mostly they do. They
yeah.
just don't look as pretty.
But when you peel it and chop it, no one's going to notice anyway, especially through things like carrot.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's changing our mindset, not necessarily that the food's any different, but our mindset changes. And the generic is a big one, and in bulk is another big one. So things like the cheese twisties, or if we like some potato chips, they're often so much more expensive when we're buying small packets of it. And there's a lot more packaging that we're going to be throwing away. So if we can buy a big packet and then divide it up for the kids' lunches, the outcome's the same. I like to do the refills rather than a new bottle, just because I feel better if I'm not creating as much packaging, and I don't have the room in my recycle bin. So I'd prefer to just get the refill and to fill up my, you know, pump hand wash or my washing powder and use that. And one of the things that I've started looking at is the unit price. And sometimes you'll see, oh, that one's, you know, 500 grams, so it must be better, it must be cheaper. But when the supermarkets do sales, you can sometimes find that the smaller packets, 3 of the smaller packets, are actually cheaper than one of the big ones. So being aware of that unit price for things like toilet paper, any of those items, it's a way of starting to become more aware of what you're spending at the supermarket. And one of the things that Sonia was talking about when you have intolerances is to look at what can I make with what I've got versus going out and buying a gluten-free bread or, you know, a gluten-free pasta. What have I got that I can make into a meal without having to go and buy things that are specifically allergy friendly?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was something I noticed so much when I first went gluten-free, was how much more expensive gluten-free pasta is, and gluten-free pastries, and gluten-free all of these biscuits, and there's usually less in the packet, and quite often they don't taste anywhere near as good either. But if you focus on things that are already gluten-free, like rice is already gluten-free and it's quite cheap and it's a good filler, and you can do a lot with it. Even if you're buying slightly fancier rice, it's still cheaper than buying gluten-free pasta. And yes, it's not the same. You probably don't want to put spaghetti sauce on rice, but it's something that the rice noodles aren't too bad with spaghetti sauce. I have tried that. But yeah, focusing in on what you can have, and the same sorts of things, like you said, like buying in season and sticking with the fruit and vegetables and all of those things. I've had an
Or
awful lot of
even using
experience
rice
cooking
flour to
gluten-free.
make your own biscuits, rather than buying gluten-free biscuits, looking at, well, if I make some gluten-free biscuits, you know, is that going to save me the money? Because it's often because somebody else has done the work.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and again, the same as the Facebook sites for saving money. There's so many Facebook sites around how do I eat gluten-free or dairy-free. So, you know, joining any of those sites, they might have some good tips, and you might only pick one up, but it's one that you didn't know yesterday. So that's another example of a way to save money. One that I think is really cool, that's sort of trending with the teenagers, is when they are younger. My daughter's 17 and her wages are quite low when she works part-time after school, so she's not earning a lot. And her and her girlfriends have actually gone thrift store shopping. So there's this whole new movement around, oh, well, you know, I got this at the thrift store and it was really cool. And she's bought some beautiful things for not very much money. And having a whole generation that are now interested in looking at, you know, Vinnie's or any of the thrift stores, I think that's a really good thing. And it's teaching your children to recycle where they can as well. So it's the key to that is that if you need a dress by Friday, you might need to go to 6 stores. But if you're buying for next summer, you know, you'll just go once every fortnight and you might pick up a t-shirt this week or a dress next week. So it's the regularity that you go to the stores rather than being able to walk in on that day and find exactly what you want. Gumtree is another amazing one, and one that I'm interested in because I used to love to renovate houses, but along with the fibros come not being able to do a lot of physical things like a whole house, but there's some really nice ways of refurbishing old furniture. So the idea of looking at Gumtree, finding a piece and then refinishing that piece rather than going and buying it brand new from, you know, any of those stores. So it can be another way of, you know, upcycling something, and it can also be a way of keeping you physically a bit active and, you know, enjoying a new hobby at not a lot of cost. The comparison site one is one that I think is really important because I've seen regularly people come and say, oh, well, I looked on this site and they said this product was really cheap. Being in the finance sector, one of the things I know is that a lot of the comparison sites are actually funded by a lender or by a financial institution. So you believe that you're going onto a Lendy or a Choosy and that they are a true comparison site. In actual fact, because they are funded by one of those financial institutions, they will skew that product to have it come up at the top of the range, or alternatively, they won't have a lot of choice in the comparisons. And we've seen one a couple of weeks ago where they had to go back and apologise because on the site it said, we compare these 22 different lenders. And when they did the due diligence behind the scenes, there was actually only 4. And so then the client was only getting a comparison of the 4. CanStar is the one that we generally steer people to because if it does have a product that is being suggested, it will tell you if it's sponsored. So the sponsored ones will be up the top, and there's usually 3 or 4 of those. And then they will have a look at all of the different products and give you a range of products and their, you know, rating from start to finish. So for financial products, for your insurance products, they are really good because they're better than some of the others because they are much more impartial than a lot of the sites that are on the market. And when I first went to compare the market, it was interesting how Bupa came up the top. And it was only when I was doing some research for this, I realised that's because they are owned by Bupa. So that's sort of a bit of a overview of ways that I've found that I can help clients to with their finances. I'd be interested if there's any questions because I'd be more than happy to help or make suggestions.
You mentioned about comparing products and things like electricity and getting a better deal on those. Can you give us some advice on how you do that when you are dealing with brain fog and fatigue that's so common with fibro?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing to do would be to have a good look at what you currently have, and that might mean that you take your electricity bill and you go, okay, well, what are the kilowatts? And you write a bit of a list so that you know exactly what the data is that you're having to compare. then and it doesn't all have to be in the same day. Then the next part would probably be to have that conversation. And what I would ask is that, say, look, I am just doing my comparisons right now. Could you please email me the information in a paper format or in an email, so that when you're after that conversation that you've had, which is usually like 55 minutes on hold for a 5-second phone call, but once you've done that, and they've emailed you your quote, then when you're in a having another quiet day and you're not feeling too bad, then you can go away and compare apples with apples. So sometimes it can be that you do this over a few days so that you're not in a position where it all gets done at once. And then again, leaving that in the notebook, because you may not, when they talk to you and they give you, oh well, we're this much of this hour and this much of that hour, and in peak periods and off peak periods, it's all pretty overwhelming. So getting a quote that you can then take away and go, okay, well, does this actually compare to that, and am I getting given two comparisons that are similar? That would be how I would expect is an easier way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. That pacing thing, it comes into so many
Yeah.
aspects of our fibro life,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to hear that it happens there as well.
Yeah. And I think too,
And
even if it is just that, you're chopping up some veggies for dinner and you can leave. A lot of people think that when you get onto a phone to a bank or an insurance company or an electrical provider, that, they sit there and wait. Because we do this all day, I'm doing 15 different things while I'm waiting, because I've learned not to get so frustrated with the wait. Some have much better hold music than others, I'll admit. But, if you can put that alongside you and do other things at the same time, that can help.
yeah, definitely. I'm the same. I always put if I'm on hold, it goes on speaker and I go and find something else to do.
Yeah.
And I imagine the people at the other end, they're probably so used to somebody going, oh, hang on, I'll take you off speaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. I think you actually covered all of the questions that came in advance. We had some questions about how to manage mortgage repayments and questions about how to save money on grocery bills. Does anybody who's attending live have any questions? You can either type them in the chat or you can unmute yourself to ask if you do. So we probably also do have some people who may be looking at either refinancing their mortgage or hopefully they're in a position where they might be able to buy their first home. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your company and what you actually do and how they might contact you?
Sure. So Argentium was set up because being old school, it was A in the white pages and it was Latin for silver, and silver was the first form of currency. We deal mostly in home loans, and I tend to specialise or have specialised in women that are going through financial separation and divorce. Mainly because I remember being so frightened when I was in that position, not sure if I could, afford the payments, not sure if I would be eligible with the bank. And so for me, it was really important to be able to help and empower people into understanding what their financial commitments were, what their borrowing ability was, and also looking at their budget and going, look, the bank says that you can borrow this much, but can you really pay that back? Are you comfortable that your budget's good enough to be able to pay that back? So it's definitely aimed at making sure that before you enter into any of those commitments, we've done the homework with you, and we hold your hand every step of the way, and make sure that you're getting the product that you want at the price that is competitive. I'm not going to say that you want, because no one wants a 6% interest rate, but at a price that is competitive. And the thing about brokers, when you go to a bank, you're only getting one financial product. And so the thing with brokers, be they insurance brokers or finance brokers, it can be a good way of them doing all of the homework for you, because you don't have to go to 35 different financial providers or insurance providers. So using a broker can be a good thing to make sure that you're getting the best sort of a broad range of offerings rather than just the offering that one institution will give you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rach. There is a question in the chat. And now I'll caveat this by saying that Rachel is a financial broker, not a health insurance broker. But that might be something that you can give a tip on. What about health insurance for people over 65? Do you know of any comparison sites or anybody who might be able to tell whether or not it's even worth having?
Yeah, so there are comparison sites, and one of the ones that I'd use for that too is CanStar, because they are sort of as best at being impartial. With health insurance, it depends on what you're after, because if you're only looking for a hospital cover or an ambulance cover, then that can make it worth it. If you're looking at cover for other products, then it's definitely worth speaking to a broker that can do that for you, because it's all that fine tuning in the background around, am I getting what I think I'm getting, or is it going to be, yes, we cover optical, but $10 of your $1,000 glasses. So making sure that you know each part of what you're actually really after and what you need, and shaving the bits that you don't need can be a way of getting insurance that is competitive or is worth it.
Great, thank you. Well, I think we've run really well on time. I will chat a little bit about MoreGoodDays for anyone. This particular webinar has been open to the public, not just to our subscribing customers. So anyone who's watching the replay, MoreGoodDays is a pain management company. We do specialize in fibromyalgia. We are reaching out into back pain as well, something that we're looking at doing that very soon. And we essentially have an online educational component, and you go through in little modules week by week, go through some tracks and learn about what's causing your pain, why it is you can have so much pain when there isn't anything sort of that shows up necessarily on a scan. And ways that you can help to learn to manage that, whether it's through psychological based techniques or hints and tips about movement and pacing. We mentioned pacing earlier. That's something that is such an important part of managing conditions like fibromyalgia. And we look into as many different angles of managing pain as we can. And we do touch on things like fatigue and brain fog and all of the other symptoms that come with fibromyalgia. We also have psychologists and support coaches like us, and we're there to help make sense of the program. You can contact us via text or email, or you can have one-on-one sessions with us, or there's lots of group sessions like this ones. We do run these every week. They're not always open to the public. The majority of them are solely for subscribers, but we run a range of topics, movement, mindset, ways to meditate, hints and tips on how to improve sleep, and lots of other lifestyle things, and coming at the management of fibromyalgia from as many different angles as possible, because we know there isn't one right answer that will work for everyone. If you are not currently a subscriber and you're interested, feel free to contact us. You can download the app in the Google Play Store or in the Apple App Store, and there's a contact us section in there. If you want to know more, one of the coaches are more than happy to give you a call and discuss whether or not we're right for your situation. We are international, and so it doesn't matter what country you're in. All of the advice that Rachael gave us today is based on Australian laws. Just for anybody who's watching internationally, a lot of the hints and tips are pretty worldwide, so ways to decrease your spending and the importance of comparing things like that. But any of this more specific advice, do keep in mind that it is Australian based, not based on the rest of rest of the world. There's an awful lot more countries with a lot of different laws, and Rachael obviously is not going to be all over every single country's laws and things that are available. So thank you very, very much to everyone who joined us live, and anyone who's watching the recording, feel free to share it with anyone that you're interested in. If you want to contact Rachael, if you're interested in getting a mortgage or refinancing your mortgage, she'll be very happy to help you. And here at MoreGoodDays, we're always happy to be of any of assistance that we're able to. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely day. And especially thank you to Rachael for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.